Yes, we are getting there. Just we need your patience. You know how technology, everything works right when you're testing, but the crunch time. But we trust God and we know that we are going to come through tonight by the grace of God. So as you wait, praise God is not hot. I don't see nobody fanning. Anybody? Wow. Fans, man. So we have a blessing this evening. Everyone, we are ready to start now, and I want to acknowledge the presence of each and every one of you. You are important, and we are glad to have you here this evening. We have with us our lead coordinator, Reverend Dr. Lennox Pigott. Welcome. And pastors, counselors in training, specially invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, one and all, greetings. It is my distinct pleasure to officially welcome you to this symposium organized by the Inter-Island Counseling Entity. The Inter-Island Counseling Entity, ICE, is the brainchild of Reverend Dr. Lennox Pigott, an Antiguan-born clinical psychologist residing in the United States. Dr. Pigott has been visiting the islands for an excess of 20 years, conducting training and counseling with individuals. He saw the need for additional counselors on the island. Here birthed the Inter-Island Counseling Entity as he embarked upon the training of counselors with the full backing of the Wesleyan Holiness Churches via our district superintendent, Reverend Everton Thomas. In addition, in an effort to encircle unity among Christian churches, students from other fellowships were also embraced and enrolled in an intensive 2-year program to be trained as certified Christian counselors. To date, a total of 27 individuals across Antigua, Barbuda, and Montserrat are being trained to provide counseling in these islands. These counselors in training are part of this symposium. For Dr. Pigott and the counselors in training, tonight and tomorrow evening, God willing, would present the culmination of months of hard work, sleepless nights, dedication, sacrifice, and intense preparation. The need for this symposium arose as we recognized that this country, our beautiful island of Montserrat, which we hold most dear, is filled with broken lives, broken families, and broken people. There is without doubt a desperate cry for help. What became evident is that there are too many misconceptions about mental health, mental illness, and as such, the citizens of Montserrat can benefit from relevant information as we seek to provide direction, guidance, and assistance. The question to ponder: is there any correlation between these issues, mental health and family relations? Our research will open the gateway to answering this and other pertinent questions. So you are right in the best place to get answers concerning mental health and family relationship. Our main goal being to take this nation, this beloved island of Montserrat, from brokenness to wholeness, by providing help, which is healing for everyday life problems. So this evening, we invite you to listen keenly as the counselors in training delivered presentations each night, after which we will open the floor for questions and discussions. May you, my beloved audience, be inspired, may you be stimulated, and may our overall goal of taking our nation from brokenness to wholeness be realized as the journey to healing now begins, one life at a time. So please welcome, we welcome Mrs. Teresina Fergus, who will be participating, Reverend Tony, we welcome you, all the pastors, all those of you who've just joined us. There's a warm welcome for you as we go into tonight's program. But before we do so, we are going to ask Reverend Keller McFarlane to pray God's guidance and direction for us. Reverend Keller.
Good night, everyone. Can we please stand for prayer? Let us pray. Our God and our Heavenly Father, tonight we are thankful unto you, Father, for your grace and for your mercies towards us, Lord, for taking us throughout the entire day and for bringing us here tonight. And Heavenly Father, as we have started, Lord, this symposium, mighty God, we pray in the name of Jesus that all will go well. Father, we pray that the information, Lord, that is received tonight, oh God, that we would put it, Lord, to practice, mighty God, and that it will bring us to a place of healing and wholeness in our lives. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you will bless all the facilitators. And we pray that through this exercise that some life, Father, would be changed for your glory and for your honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Reverend McFarlane. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you our lead coordinator, the founder of this ICE program. He's no other but Reverend Dr. Lennox Pigott. Reverend Dr. Lennox Pigott is the pastor of Grace Wesleyan Holiness Church. Okay, I stand corrected. Tell me again, please, Professor. Okay, good. Grace Family Fellowship. Good there, one. Very good. In the Bronx, New York. He's also a senior supervising psychologist for the state of New York, working in the Westchester office of developmental disability. Prior to that, he worked as psychotherapist in the Office of Mental Health, counseling the mentally ill. Dr. Pigott has been part of the counseling and advisory team for the Wesleyan Church in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania areas, and has counseled pastors, individuals, and families facing many crisis situations. He served as a member of the District Board of Administration, both as lay and a minister for over 12 years. Dr. Pigott was born in Orleans. He was educated at the Orleans Infant School, the Old Road Primary School, and the Antigua Grammar School, where he served as deputy head boy and also captained the cricket team. Following his graduation from school, he was a teacher at the Antigua Pilgrim High School for 2 years, teaching English language, English literature, history, and geography. In 1978, our professor, Dr. Pigott, migrated to the USA for further studies. He earned a bachelor's degree, psychology and English from the City University of New York, and then obtained his PhD in clinical psychology from the Graduate School of the City University of New York. He lectured for 15 years as a professor of psychology in the City University, and for 8 years in the Psychology Psychiatry Division of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where he trained and supervised psychology interns and medical students. He has also served as a professor in several universities in the New York area. Dr. Pigott also has a Master of Divinity in Religious Studies from Drew University in New Jersey. For the past 21 years, he has coordinated the Ministerial Training Program, MINSCAP, of the Wesleyan Holiness Church on the Antigua and Barbuda, Montserrat, and Dominica district. He is a family man, being married with 5 children and 3 grandchildren who are the love of his life. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to present to you our lead coordinator, Dr. Pigott.
Good night to everyone, and it is indeed a privilege for me to once again be on this lovely island of Montserrat and to be interacting with you. Thank you for coming. All we're doing tonight is bringing to our awareness the severity and the need for us to address issues related to mental health. As I have traveled both to Antigua and Montserrat for the last how many years, it has become evident that there is a need for us to address the mental health of individuals in our communities, whether we are in church, and especially if we're in church, because sometimes we who are in church are suffering most, but we internalize it, we keep it in, we don't talk about it. And the symposium is intended for us to begin to talk about it, to begin to address issues that are impacting all of our lives, the lives of our children, the lives of other family members and neighbors. And so this is what we are doing. We have been training some counselors to become certified counselors who will be able to deal with people who are having mental problems. And we call ourselves the Inter-Island Counseling Entity, or ICE. And we will be offering free counseling here in Montserrat and also in Antigua, Barbuda, for people who are having challenges, for people who would like to live lives that are completely whole. And that's why we term our symposia, the theme of our symposium, From Brokenness to Wholeness. We're offering help, healing for everyday life problems. The counselors in training have done extensive research, and that's what they're going to be sharing with you tonight. And so I'm not going to spend the time, I'm not going to be the one presenting, I'm going to be listening like you. They will present, and at the end, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. This is our second of two symposium. We had one last weekend in Antigua, and now the Montserrat counselors in training are now going to be the ones to present to you on what their findings are. So sit back and listen and take in what is said to you. Take notes. The questions will come at the end, and so in order for you not to forget, you should write your questions, and we will attempt to answer every question that you bring before us. So I hope that you have an enlightening evening and that you will take away from here something new, something that would enhance your life, the lives of your family members, the lives of your co-workers, and the lives of people in your church and neighborhood. God bless you as you listen tonight.
Thank you, Professor. And for those of you who just joined us, we welcome you warmly. We recognize the presence of our colleague, Bishop Melroy Mead. We're happy to have you, and all the pastors and you distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are glad to have each and every one of you. Now, I'm sure you'd like, I'm just going to give you just a little thought about just setting this. Remember, the theme, the subject for tonight is mental health. So that you'd be able to focus more, I hope that this little thought about mental health would help you as you would try to formulate your questions and thoughts you may want to share. A little over a year ago, a group of students from Antigua and Barbuda, as well as Montserrat, embarked upon a training program geared at providing counseling for people with mental health issues, illness. We all, and especially in Montserrat, we all have our view about what is mental illness. But mainly some mental illness has been experienced by those out there who are, what we in Montserrat say about mental people. They're crazy, right? Well, we're going to put that to rest tonight as a start. Over the course of the training, so far, the counselors in training, as we refer to ourselves, have been shocked into realizing that mental health and illness surround not craziness, but the everyday life problems that we all encounter, which from time to time can impact our lives. Thus, we all experience mental health issues. Some of the things we have learned are, and you're going to learn something more, that they're not crazy, that they have problems and they just need to know how to deal with them. Tonight's segment of our symposium is intended to share some of these revelations with you so that you would understand more about the Montserrat community. The interest surrounding the subject of mental health has been growing around the world, as in Montserrat. It is recognized that mental health impacts the way individuals navigate the challenging dynamics of our modern world, and those with mental health challenges can no longer be neglected or left on their own. They must be addressed, because over the years they have been left on their own. But tonight, our presenters will provide an overall view of the problem as seen through the eyes of various sources. They will present with us comprehensive data acquired through research depicting the views of ordinary Montserratians, citizens of Montserrat, on the landscape of mental health. That will be followed by some suggested recommendations, solutions to growing concerns, and simple tips geared toward help, which is healing everyday life problems. So I invite you, my distinguished guests, please listen carefully. Take notes. Also, as you listen, if you have any questions, our presenters, our facilitator, and our professor would like to answer them. So you can write down your questions if you so desire. Now, my pleasure now is to introduce our counselors in training. We have Miss Stephanie Tuitt. She is a member of the Davie Hill Wesleyan Holiness Church, and Mr. Courtney Crump, member of the Beulah Wesleyan Holiness Church. And at the end of the presentation, Mrs. Teresina Fergus, Director of Social Services and a trained counselor, will be the facilitator for the discussion. So we invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to listen attentively as Miss Stephanie Tuitt starts the ball rolling and concluded by Mr. Courtney Crump. God bless you.
Good night, everyone. Tonight, Mr. Crump and I will take you on a journey to examine the state of mental health in Montserrat. We'll start with an introduction as to to let you know that there's no health without mental health. And with that, we will define what mental health is for you and what mental illness is. And the objective of our study is to examine the state of mental health in Montserrat and to recommend intervention techniques to deal with these mental health issues. Then we look at the problem, the method that we would have used, the findings, we'll let you know what the findings are, and the recommendations. So for introduction, we know that mental health is becoming increasingly important. It's an important issue in Montserrat. And we know that more than 1 in 10 persons around the world has a mental health condition. And the experience of these persons are shaped by marginalization in mental health laws and policies. And this manifests itself in, among other things, such as exclusion, discrimination, stigmatization, lack of access to opportunities, and an overrepresentation of persons with mental health conditions among populations living in poverty. We know that stigma against the mentally challenged is prevalent around the world, and that is one of the reasons why we decided to do this study to assess people's perception of mental health illness in Montserrat. So what is our problem statement? Mental health on Montserrat has evolved from being highly stigmatized and discriminated, where only public institutions made referrals to the mental health unit. And the problems with the current situation, we see increases in mental health conditions, mental health cases. We have inadequate staffing, high prevalence of stigma, persons with acute mental illnesses being held in the prisons. We have a mental treatment act that needs to be revised, and there's a lack of evidence-based information to assess mental health cases. One of the things that we need to know, and is of importance, is that there's no health without mental health. So I want this to be a bit interactive so that people would get to understand what mental health really is. So when I ask the question, you'll probably look at read from the screen. So what is mental health? So I like the audience to read what is on the screen to get a good idea as to what mental health really is. So read it aloud. Okay, so we see that mental health is positive. There's no negative about mental health. It says that mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal life stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to their community. We'll now look at what mental illness is. And when I ask the question, I want you to read it aloud again. What is mental illness? So read from the screen.
Mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. Mental illnesses can be associated with distress and other problems, functioning in social or work or family activities.
Okay, good. So we see what mental illness is again, what mental health is. Mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or they could be a combination of them, and can be associated with distress or problems functioning in social life, your work life, or family activities. So that's why they can say there is no health without mental health. We need to have wholeness. Who can be affected? This is another interesting one that I want you to read. Who can be affected by mental illnesses? Okay, we read it from the screen. Very good. Okay, continue reading.
Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a medical condition, just like heart disease or diabetes, and it is treatable.
Very good. It says mental illness does not discriminate. It can happen to anybody. Any one of us can be affected by mental illness. It doesn't matter your status in life, where you live or where you come from, you can be affected by mental illness. And as the saying goes, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's an illness, it's a mental condition, and the fact is it is treatable. Okay, so we'll continue with our research objective. The objective of this study is to identify gaps in past research and to build on them by undertaking further investigation to assess people's perception in Montserrat and to look at the services provided for the mentally ill. Because one of the things that we looked at while we're doing our research is that there were no national perception of people's idea of what goes on with in the mental health service. So we went to look to see what people's thoughts were about mental health in Montserrat. And these are the questions that we generated to answer the question. What are the people's perception of mental health on Montserrat? And is there a public awareness of the symptoms of mental health? And we just identified some of the causes. How persons with mental illnesses are treated in Montserrat. Is there public awareness of the policies and strategies or evidence available to deal with mental illness in Montserrat? And is the mental health service adequate to meet the needs of the mentally ill? And the responses will determine the local perceptions of mental health on island and make suggestions to improve the landscape. So we set about to do this study, and the study was undertaken using a mixed method approach, the data collection. So we used a combination of both qualitative and quantitative data strategies. The reason for using this strategy is that it provides for the use of two research methods, quantitative and qualitative. It provides a clearer picture of the connection between the methods. The research problem is treated as the main focus. Multiple benefits can be derived from applying this method. It gives you the ability to see things from different perspectives, and not just one. It creates a balance between the information gleaned and the methods. For example, which shows people's perception of mental health in Montserrat. So as mentioned before, we use qualitative data and quantitative data. So the qualitative data captured the interview and people's personal accounts or documents, and they illustrate how people in the community think and respond. The quantitative, we used tables and graphs to analyze the findings. The limitations in the research. We found that there was not enough information on mental health. And this is needed for decision making and planning and monitoring and evaluation of the services. There were no briefings to inform mental illness. So what they would tell you, they will have 200 cases or 300 cases, but we don't know how many are male, how many are female, and what condition they have, broken down in that format. So we don't know the prevalence, we don't know the types, the effects of the mental illnesses, and the treatment that they're getting and how it affects them. So some of our findings, and this is the current situation, we found that there were a caseload of 200 to 300 clients cutting across all spectrum of mental illness. We had inadequate staffing. We had 3 persons. We have a mental health nurse, a psychiatric nurse, and a clinical psychologist at the unit. We found that there were no mental health aides, no social work attached, and no therapist. So we looked at the common mental health disorders, the most common mental health disorders on Ireland. They said anxiety and depression, substance abuse, and these are mainly around alcohol and marijuana use. We have children with neurodevelopment conditions such as autistic spectrum syndrome, learning disability, and general late milestone development among children. And we noted that there was no mention of schizophrenia, which is one of the most common mental disorders on Montserrat. So we look at the percentages that we found: 4.9% anxiety, 45.9% depression. Again, we said there's no percentage reported for schizophrenia, but in 2018, we noticed that schizophrenia was the most common disorder out of a total of 107 mentally ill persons. And there are very low numbers of clients on their caseload with depression or anxiety, which they found was very surprising given the environment that we live in. Disorders by population segments: substance abuse, and those among young people, adolescents; depression, mostly among the elderly, middle-aged, and children. Known cases of mental illness, trauma from previous natural disasters, and social issues such as poverty. Some of the challenges encountered by the mental health patients: stigmatization, lack of support from the family members, lack of opportunities due to stigma from mental illnesses. And some of the challenges by the health practitioners: they have inadequate trained mental health practitioners, inadequate staffing, lack of modern, updated legislation for effective practice, and lack of resources to implement their programs. The types of intervention strategies that are currently available to persons with mental illnesses: we see medical intervention, drugs, and physiotherapy from the Ministry of Health. Social and financial support is provided, financial assistance and food packages from supermarkets and cook shops, and this has been dealt with by the Social Services Department. We have housing. The mentally ill persons are provided with housing, either independently or supported by wardens, and this is by the Ministry of Health with some collaboration from the housing unit. We have guidance counseling, and this is provided at both primary and secondary schools, education psychologists, and this person is attached to the Montserrat Secondary School. One of the questions asked is, how does the law enforcement deal with mental issues? And the mental health unit says that they collaborate with the police or family members who may be used to get individuals who are high risk to themselves and others to seek intervention. And we see this in the Mental Health Act, the Mental Treatment Act, which says that a police officer, a mental health work officer, may be assisted in the performance of the duty by any police officer of the Royal Montserrat Police Force, particularly if they relate to detention and restraint of the person suspected to be or adjudged to be of unsound mind. So the police, by law, can work with the mental health unit. In terms of mental health education and awareness, there are education programs, education to the through to various means such as social media. You have radio programs like Enhancing Your Mental Health, stigma and discrimination awareness talk within the community, and the use of people who would have gone through issues with mental health to join in to support as advocates. Our next portion is we looked at the mental health system against the World Health Organization's action plan. They have a situational analysis tool that they use to assess the mental health system across the Caribbean and across the world, more or less. And they have 5 domains. So what we did was to look at the last report that was done for, it was 2022, but the data was from 2019 for Montserrat, to see where we are currently. So in terms of the population, back in 2018, this is from the Labor Force Survey, we had a population of 4,869 persons, and we see in 2022 Labor Force data, we see 4,649 persons, of which 2304 are male and 43 female. This is just like demographics. Their life expectancy is about 75 years, and there's no change in that. In terms of ethnicity, there's no current change in that as well. In terms of belonger, we have no data, but I think that the census that is upcoming will tell us whether there are changes to these. In terms of unemployment, we see that unemployment has increased by 2.2% from 2018 to 2020. That's just about 2 years. In terms of the burden of mental health, we have 212 known cases between 13 to 15 years. And suicidal ideation was 16.4%. That was back in 2008, but there's no current data on that. And the burden of mental health in adults is unknown, because there's no data that's been found to verify the numbers. The second domain is leadership and governance governance for mental health. And this takes into consideration the mental health action plan. There is a mental health action plan, but it's currently being reviewed. The policy or plan, is it in line with international human rights? Yes, it is. Mental health legislation? Yes, but it needs to be revised. The inclusion of mental health in broader policies. No, that has not been implemented. Inclusion of people with lived experiences, and that was not happening back then, but it is happening now. The health service financing, that is free, government gives free care for mental health persons. So they get free medication, they get free therapy. The next domain is mental health care services. Psychiatric inpatient acute unit, we don't have one. We still don't have one. Outpatient clinics, we do have outpatient clinics. Community mental health team, yes, there's a community mental health team that goes out to look for those who would not come in. Child and adolescent services, there was none, but there is now in the schools. You have dedicated mental health crisis service, we don't have that. Talking therapies, yes, there's public. Rehabilitation services, no, and we don't have a psychiatrist on the island. We have a visiting psychiatrist. The fourth domain, mental health literacy, that is low and it still remains low. Attitudes towards mental health, we have high levels of stigma back then and it still remains high. Suicide prevention strategies, we don't have. Promotion and prevention of the overall mental health strategy. Yes, we have the continue enhancing your mental health radio program. And education, mental health promotion in education, school counselors in both primary and the secondary schools. And the final domain is information systems, evidence, and research. General health information systems, it is paper-based, and their plans for electronic, and this right now, I think their plans are ongoing. I think they have an ongoing project to digitize the medical records. Mental health indicators, there are none. Performance report and mental health care. Yes, mental health produces a report on the activity, but it's just that it's not published. This is the end of my presentation to let you know what is available for mental health patients in Montserrat. Mr. Crump will now take you through the rest of the journey.
Hey, good night, everyone. Let us all remind ourselves what were the questions that we were tasked with asking, not only ourselves, but everyone else. What is the people's perception of mental health on Montserrat? Is there public awareness of the symptoms of mental illness? How are persons with mental illness treated on Montserrat? Is there public awareness of the policies, strategies, interventions, or services available to deal with mental illness? Is the mental health service adequate to the needs of the mentally ill? And we did some data collection, and this was through questionnaires. So they were hard copy questionnaires, so we handed out paper questionnaires to persons to complete for us. We targeted initially 75 persons. However, we got back 73 questionnaires, so that was a 97% return completion rate, with you're right. The age of the respondents who participated ranged from individuals 13 years to individuals over 60 years. There were 55 females compared to only 18 males who participated. The education level of the respondents ranged from primary level education through to doctoral level education. We also had respondents with certifications and vocational training. We tried to capture everybody. We wanted persons to understand the questions in the questionnaire. The survey reflected a variety of employment sectors on island. However, the greater percentage of respondents were in some form of employment within the government of Montserrat, or chose that option where another choice was not applicable. So you will see 45% of the respondents were government affiliated in terms of the work that they do. The respondents were also asked to indicate the family structure which best describe their own family. The greater percentage, 41%, indicated they were from single-parent family homes, 34% from the nuclear family, which were both parents living in the same household. And there were 10% from the extended family structure. Other family structures were below 10%. You can see that from the chart. Moreover, 58% of the respondents described their family's psychosocial environment as loving and caring, quiet and peaceful, 13%, united, 17%. The other family psychosocial environments were below 10%. When respondents were asked to rate their parents' affection in their home environment, 54% rated their parent affection as above average, 11% or high, 11% rated them as just bare average, and 27% rated parents' affection as below average to low. Respondents were also asked to indicate the most reliable source of help during difficult times. The majority indicated 34% as the immediate family, 32% as a friend, 16% the extended family, and of note, 10% would go to the church if there's a mental issue. And the schools and other groups were below 10%. So we see here, people prefer to go to family, I guess, for confidentiality reasons it may seem, but who knows? When respondents were asked to give their perception of mental health, 19% think of mental health as depression and emotional distress, 15% as sadness, 14% as anger and madness, and less than 10% think of mental health as happiness and self-love. So we realize what's happening here, the stigma. Mental health, however, 55% were unsure about their comfortability around individuals with a mental condition. 33 of the respondents felt at ease interacting with individuals with a mental health condition, where approximately 8% were not comfortable. Of note, 55% were not sure. They did not say that they are comfortable. So again, we're seeing something here. However, when asked if Montserrat society embraces individuals diagnosed with mental health challenges, 53% responded the society would somewhat embrace them. 21% were not sure. 18% responded no. And only 8% responded yes. When asked, are you equipped to handle a family member with mental illness, 97% were not or somewhat prepared, and 3% admitted to being very prepared. Again, the statistics, you need to note them. The respondents were asked if mental health support was easily accessible in Montserrat. 51% responded as they're not sure, and 30% responded yes, 19% responded no. The question, do you think the rights of persons suffering with mental illness are protected? 49% responded they were not sure. 25% responded yes. 26% responded no. The question, is there a policy in your service group for dealing with members who have a mental condition? 60% responded they were not sure. 26% responded no. And 14% responded yes. So the question was, is there a policy in your service group? 60% were not sure. The question, is there a mental health support hotline available through your religious organization? 59% responded not sure. 37% responded no. 4% responded yes. So the majority of persons were trying to say that there's none. So, does your workplace provide tools or resources for dealing with mental health? 47% responded no. 34% were not sure. And 11% responded yes. So does your workplace provide tools or resources? 47% no, 34% not sure. So that's 81%. So it's really not there. The respondents were asked if mental health awareness is promoted in Montserrat. 45% responded yes, 38% responded somewhat, 8% responded no, and 8% were not sure. The question was, is mental health awareness promoted in Montserrat? The question, does the government of Montserrat have a policy that protects the rights of individuals within the business environment who may have a mental condition? 70% responded not sure, 15% responded somewhat, 8% responded yes, and 7% responded no. They were again asked, are there mental illness intervention programs in Montserrat? 49% responded they were not sure, 40% responded yes, and 11% responded no. So, just to provide you with a summary now of the data findings, the survey participants knew mental health support was accessible. Yes, so 30% of them did. But those who were not sure they just did not know how easily accessible it was. So they knew, 30% knew that it was accessible, but 51% were not sure how easily accessible mental health support is in Montserrat. Very few survey participants confirmed yes, 14%, that a mental health policy exists in their service group, and 4% responded yes to the availability of a mental health support hotline. The survey participants confirmed a low of 8% yes to whether the workplace provides tools or resources for dealing with mental health. Only a handful of survey participants knew, so yes, that government has a policy that protects the rights of individuals within the business environment who may have a mental health condition. Largely 70% were not sure. The survey participants were mainly not sure, 49%, what intervention programs were available or whether they exist. And they answered, 11% answered no in terms of the intervention, whether or not they were intervention programs. So in conclusion, government of Montserrat needs to work to increase public awareness and ensure easier access to mental health support on Montserrat for the public. What we noted that persons generally, if there's a crisis of some sort, the first point of contact would be the social services department. Service groups, including the churches, should have a mental health policy and a framework to access counseling support. Example, need more hotlines to support persons with mental health conditions. They need to know where to call when they need somebody to talk to. The workplace, both private entities and public service agencies, should do more to provide tools or resources for workers to help them cope positively with mental health and related conditions. The government of Montserrat needs to have an established policy that guides the business environment to address mental health and to protect the rights of the individuals with mental health conditions. The mental health unit should increase the educational outreach and awareness programs on mental illness intervention programs. Our recommendations and solutions: to reduce stigmatization, so to reduce the stigma, we can make more effective use of media such as radio programs, website, and other social media platforms to raise awareness about stigma against mental illness. Encourage and provide training in mental health to assist family and friends to support family members and friends who may become mentally ill. Promote mental health awareness in the educational curriculum, in schools and in the churches and other service organizations, so organizations like the Red Cross and other clubs across the island. We should employ more trained staff to develop the mental health unit. We currently have an education psychologist, guidance counselors, clinical psychologist, mental health nurse. However, more needs to be done. Example, we provide more mental health aides, social workers, attached social workers, get them trained, or occupational therapists to assist at the mental health unit. Provide training for health staff, family members, the police, and those who deal with mentally ill patients to enable them to effectively assist the mentally challenged. Produce an annual report of the mental health care services in Montserrat to include indicators for strategic monitoring and make those available to the public. Support can be accessed through ICE to provide help, healing for everyday life problems to individuals, groups, family, and couples, marital therapy. I think that brings me to the end of my findings.
Thank you, Mr. Crump and Ms. Tuitt. I'm sure you took it in, okay? And now is your time because we want your involvement. There's someone with paper and pencil. If you would like to write your question, you can just show your hand if you didn't get a paper and pencil. And there's a mic that you can come and say your question. So I'm sure you want to give a big hand again for the two presenters. And I believe you're not going away with the idea that mental people are crazy, okay? So to lead our discussion, to facilitate our discussion is Mrs. Teresina Fergus. And just to tell you just a few things about her. She gained her first degree in health and psychology, then a master's in public and clinical aspects of addiction. She has a master's in counseling, and she serves as the director of social services for over 10 years, and this gives her the opportunity to work with mental health clients, providing social care, facilitating discussions on rehabilitation interventions to guide core plans. And Mrs. Fergus is an avid advocate for persons with mental health issues. And having someone like that on Montserrat is a great treat. So it's my pleasure to ask you to welcome Mrs. Fergus as she facilitates the discussion.
Good evening, everyone. This is the exciting bit of a symposium where we hear from you, your views, your perceptions, your thoughts on the presentation. It's the presenters, they presented one presentation with 3 parts, basically. So the first part is the current situation on Montserrat with regard to mental health and mental illnesses. The second part of the presentation looks at persons in terms of the perception of mental health, mental illness, and treatment and interventions and policies and legislations. And the third part offers recommendations and solutions. So those are the 3 parts. Just to quickly recap and to guide the questions or the discussions, I want to touch on a couple things that were said in the presentations. Now, the current situation or the public statement that can you please put that slide up? The slide, the topic is public statement. Now, the public statement, current situation here in Montserrat is that mental health cases have increased. And that's not a good thing. The second one I'm seeing here in terms of inadequate staffing. That's still not a good thing. And then, of course, as Sister Ruth keep on saying, are you crazy if you have a mental health issue? Are you mad? This is the high prevalence of stigma that prevent persons from accessing the necessary interventions that were mentioned in the presentation. The other thing I'm seeing here is that persons with acute mental illness being held in prison. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. Then you also, but it's not a good thing. There's another thing in terms of course, we have a Mental Treatment Act. How many persons in this room know that we have a Mental Health Treatment Act? Oh boy, I'm just seeing 4 hands. And if I scan quickly in a room about 40 to 50 persons, I am so happy that you attend this symposium. You also have, there is a lack of evidence-based data to assess the mental health system. Good news is, this good news is not bad, that we are currently reviewing the Mental Health Treatment Act and the mental health framework for providing care and interventions. So these are the public statements that were presented. And just to quickly add another bit, and then I can start the floor rolling in terms of questions coming in. Who can be affected by mental illness? Now, I can be affected. Sanity, mental health, is that there's a thin line, very thin line. So all of us in this room can be affected. All right? So everybody can be affected. The question is the severity. Is the severity. But all of us at one point, I like to think, question our mental health and where we're at, especially in the current dynamics of society and things happening. So yes, mental health is everyone's business. The other thing I'm seeing here is that it's nothing to be ashamed of. But however, based on the data that was presented, it appears that the person's perception of mental health is something really to be ashamed of. And who can really wrong the perception? Because when you look at mental health, persons with mental health illness, what do you see? You see person walking the street, you see a set of persons outside line, and so right away you're thinking that, I do not wish to have a mental health illness. What you're seeing on the ground does not look good. So I can understand why people will be ashamed to have a mental health illness. Now, it is a medical condition. It is a medical condition. But I'm saying here, just like heart diseases or diabetes, it is treatable. I agree with you. However, it's slightly different from a heart disease, because if I said to you that I have a heart disease, how would you take it? You will like, yeah, have you been to the doctor? What did the doctor say? You'll be ever so nice. Now, if I tell you I'm psychotic, I'm schizophrenic, you will like, huh? You're more run. So there's a slight difference in perception of mental health illnesses. It's slightly different from having a heart disease, I would say. But the bottom line is, the end result is that it is treatable. It is treatable. It can be managed. It can be managed. And I know over the years working with mental health persons, I've seen changes in people. Matter of fact, I'm sure you don't know that people actually work within the government system and have a mental health problem. You would not know. So it can be managed. Okay, I think enough of me talking, so I would ask at this point if anyone has a question with regard to, or not even a question, a thought, a shared, anything you would like to share on the current situation or on the perception, the data that gave the perception of mental health and the interventions and the policy, or if you want to add to the recommendation, we're quite happy to hear you tonight. Sonia, I've seen your hand.
Okay, good night, everybody. Just two short things. One of the things that I've noted is that persons with depression, or I've observed, persons with depression, sometimes they hide it. So you go up to a person and say, you say, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm all right. But then behind closed doors, it's another situation, and sometimes we don't find out until something drastic happens to them, maybe physically or whatever. So certainly more training needs to be done in terms of the signs being noted, and if we could help before, extreme circumstances come about. The second thing I also wanted to note was that the other stigma that is added to mental health is that some persons are afraid, because for many years in Montserrat, as soon as you have identified or are identified with a mental illness, they say the nurse then jam injection into you. So I think that is one of the main reasons, especially in Montserrat, why persons really don't want to go and get help. So there should be some kind of assessment. So is there an explanation as to maybe the spectrum, or how the nurses or the doctors, the psychiatrists come about with the need for the injection or the drugs? Yes, thanks.
I'm now thinking I regret accepting this task. But But Dr. Pigott is here, and I am so sure that he will rescue me when I need rescuing. Now, you did ask about signs of depression, and not just only depression, signs of any mental health illness, and the recommendation for more awareness program or educational program to let people know that, hey, if you're suffering from lack of sleep, or you're suffering that way you don't want to leave your house, these different signs of depression, what do you do? So it's good to have a knowledge of some of these mental health illnesses. So I'm sure there's someone writing all the recommendation or all the, so that would be logged, and I agree with you. More awareness, more education, so people know what to look for. It's like prevention better than cure. So I totally agree with you. In terms of the injection, yes, that's a standing thing here in Montserrat regarding person receiving the injection. And when they receive the injection, the state before and after is different. Now, that's I would say to you now, this is more on the medical side. One thing I do know, though, that as the presentation did say, they do have a team. There's a team, there's a visiting psychiatrist, there's a clinical psychologist, there are mental health nurses, and what they would do is assess the client. They would do an assessment of the client, a holistic assessment of the client, and then there would be some kind of intervention. So if the intervention is to give the injection, so maybe we need to relook the prescribed medication. That's a possibility. But I do know that the team would assess. So it's just not one person assess. You will have a holistic assessment done, including a social worker too. So we look at the whole man. But as I would say, maybe they need to relook, because there was a thought that we had during the volcanic crisis. We had some mental health patient went to the UK, and someone was saying that, I've seen this person, and the person looks well. When the person was in Montserrat, the person's hand was trembling, but the person is well able to, access and shop and live by themselves. So the question was asked at the time, are we using the right medication? So as I said, that part, I'm sure person will listen, is whether or not we need to review the medications.
Let me say, medication ought to be a last resort. And as you quite rightly said, there needs to be a comprehensive assessment that begins with, understanding all of the issues surrounding what the person is experiencing, and then probably move towards like therapy, counseling before one gets to medication. And because psychological illnesses run on a continuum, and I think that's what, what's your name again there? Terry was saying. That's what Terry was saying. And there is really no demarcation lines between what we call normal and abnormal behavior. We all can get there at any time. Yeah. And so, let's say one is having some adjustments with life. You talk about depression, and all of us feel down from time to time. Then the clinical depression then is something that's quite different. That's when a person really has problem functioning. There are people who are depressed, but they function. They go to work. They're out there, and so there are forms of treatment, and probably that's something, Courtney, that we need to write to say, well, we need to review the forms of treatment that have been provided here at Montserrat. Because to go to medication right away, and especially if the medication comes in the form of injection, then people are not going to seek help that they should be seeking.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pigott. And just to support Dr. Pigott, I did mention that there's an assessment with not just the psychiatrist, but with the clinical psychologist, and that person will provide the counseling. I also mentioned the social work. We look at the social aspect of the person, and so therefore, it's not necessary that you have a mental health incident straight away they're going to inject you. No. It's just to assess you, see where you are. Maybe you have a slight depression. Let's do some counseling, anxiety. Let's see how we could address what causing anxiety, the triggers that cause it. So it's not straight to injection. I think somewhere along the perception is in Montserrat that is straight to injection. No. All right?
I want to believe that that's a perception.
That is a perception. I work within the Ministry of Health and Social Services in the past 15 years, and that is a perception. Any further question?
Good night. A good friend of mine asked me to ask these 3 questions. He says, why do they put persons with mental health in villages here in Montserrat? In villages, or I think they're talking about the Oreo Villa. And the second one is, how do you determine who goes to Oreo Villa and those who stay in the community? And the third one, I think you have been touching on it. How can you move from the injection, since it causes some people to be jumpy? They can't deal with you straight after they have taken the injection. And just from me, just about 2 weeks ago, a person called me because their confidential person who will normally be there with them to go to the clinic, said they want somebody who is reliable, because the perception was that they might just think that I am crazy and they would want to dump the injection on me. So please come with me, Pastor. So that perception needs to be educated upon and eliminated somehow.
Wow, deep. Okay, so the first question, why do they place persons with mental health in the community? Well, it's more like the community then, in the villages, in the community. Rather than put them in prison or put them on Oriole, they live in the community, yeah? Among us then. So my neighbor is someone who has a mental health issue, yeah? Okay. Now, Montserrat is the, I think, I'm going to say this, but I maybe need to do more research. But based on my Caribbean colleagues, Montserrat is the only person who have a community-based program for mental health. And last time I presented in Antigua, they were like, wow, they were impressed. And I know that Dominica is taking that route, where you don't see mental health persons as being prisoners and lock them and shut them. So the approach is they're human being, they have a slight mental health illness, they're getting the necessary counseling, the necessary medication, they can now be rehabilitated back into the community. So 2010, if I remember, there was some mental health houses that were built in different villages. And those were houses that they recognized that there were no place to put persons in mental health. So you have at least, if I remember, 12 units. and they're at strategic places in Montserrat. And so persons who were deemed, yes, they have a mental health, but they can live on their own in the community with little support from the mental health unit or from social services. So yes, they have a mental health illness. However, with the monitoring, the support mechanism that is in place for them, and the follow-ups, they are currently being placed in the community. The question here, are you at risk if they live near you? I think I'm hearing a yes here. Okay. Now,
how are you at risk if they live near you? No, you have to. People are online, so you can't.
I had a neighbor, yeah, that walks around my house when I was a young man in his panty. Yeah? I have a neighbor that walks around the house in his panty. Panty. In a woman panty. In a woman nightie. And walking around the house late at night. And that's safe? That's not safe.
How does that put you at risk?
Huh?
How does that put you at risk?
Because he likes men and he's looking for something.
You ain't gonna bother with me.
Huh?
You ain't gonna bother.
No, you don't know that.
You gonna bother with me?
No, not me. Me not bother with you. No. But if he coming into my yard, what does that cause?
Just call authorities, you boy. He's not gonna hurt. You see, maybe something like that needs to be brought to the attention of so that those who provide help can give him some additional help.
We have
we just a minute. We cannot put someone like that in prison.
No, I'm not saying to put them in prison. You don't have somebody checking on them often.
Okay.
Yeah?
So that's not. Okay.
Yeah?
So that's what needs to be looked at.
And that's happened. That's for years. That's for years now.
Okay.
That's for years now. That's
All
not.
right. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah?
So maybe, Terry, what needs to happen is that there needs to be different levels of supervision for different types of community houses. Some that may not need as much supervision as others, and some because we have to find a place to put them, and we have to find places that they're humane. They have to be treated with humaneness. And so what we need to do is to, I think it's a wonderful initiative. I think if every island can have some kind of initiative like that, that would be wonderful. But just review the needs of each facility. So those who need a little bit more supervision, right? Maybe 24-hour supervision, you have somebody there with them. Those who don't need as much supervision, we give it to different levels.
all right, so you will kindly just move me along to the second question, Oriole Villa versus the community. Now, Oriole Villa is exactly what Dr. Pigott is saying in terms of level of supervision. So, Philip, who mentioned about these mental health persons who possibly may have a relapse and may not be properly managed. In such a case, if you have a situation where one of them live next to you and you recognize, hold on a sec, this person was quiet all the time and suddenly start to run around the house or start to do things that are very abnormal, what do? You contact the mental health unit or you contact social services. Now, what does that actually say is that the person may have a lapse or a full-blown relapse. Okay? So it's just a matter, of course, we, as services that we provide in the ministry, always relying on the public to inform us of what's happening. In the situation with Oriel Villa now, we have, Oriel Villa is a unit that was built again around 2010 it should be or operate as a rehabilitation center. So what will happen, that person that Philip mentioned would go in, get the necessary treatment or rehabilitation interventions, and then move back into the community. That was the purpose for Oriel Villa. All right? So Oriel Villa have 12 units or 12 apartments, and in terms of the level of the illnesses, you most find that person who live there, their risk is higher or the level is higher. So therefore, they are unable to move into the community unless that they're rehabilitated enough or sufficient to move them into the community. So if you have a relapse or you move into Oriel, they provide the necessary treatment, you get better, and you move back into the community. So that's what Oriel Villa should be, or that's the purpose of that building. So it's 12 units, and persons are there to receive the necessary rehabilitation. What it basically saying that they cannot live on their own without the necessary supervision. The last question, we had touched on that, injection, zombie, feeling the whole, looking like you're not totally in control of your limbs and other parts. Now, that's something I will leave to, for the professionals to review what causing that, because I know some people actually get an injection and they're not behaving like somebody else. So everybody handles medication slightly different. So it's up to the psychiatrist and those persons who prescribe to think about it. But it is rather interesting, though, that the level, the high prevalence of stigma, and it actually linked to the injection. You notice that, Dr. Pigott?
Yeah, because I want to believe, but I can't be sure. I don't know what it is. Because today, medication is so advanced and so improved that injection is hardly ever given. People are given, medication in tablet form. So my suspicion is that it's just a perception that it is a very rare case where an injection has to be given.
And it may not be a perception. In the earlies, a lot of people were walking like zombies, but you hardly see that zombie-like effect happening. So there must be some kind of improvement. Right. And as mentioned earlier, I know persons work within the government sector that have a mental health illness and on medication, but you would not know unless I tell you. So as Dr. Pigott said, this medication has improved over the years, that I can work alongside you and you do not recognize that there's any illnesses happening with me at all. So it has improved.
We appreciate it has improved, but it's more what we see. I think it's a good.
You see it may not be an injection. It could be the effect of a regular medication.
Yeah. But as I said, it's, what you know in the past and then what you see, so you just carry it forward. And
so maybe somebody needs to go in, Courtney, find out what have they been given. We need to know. Go ahead.
Okay. Earlier, we were speaking about risks to the community when you rehabilitate them. And I think that where you put them in the community, you may have someone responsible for them. But I think it would be good in the neighborhood, people are aware and have whatever the signs are, so we can reach out to the relevant persons and share. Because my recollection of a situation is where it may not be a threat to the community physically, but mentally, or even to the children, like Philip was sharing. This individual would just be naked. And because she was female, you would find when she has a menstrual cycle, she just going down the road, it was uncomfortable. And the children in the neighborhood, they felt uncomfortable as well. So I think there is some level, I don't know what impact that would have, but I surely think emotionally there would be some level of impact. So my recommendation is that if we are placing them within the community, have someone within the community who would be able to reach out where you see these signs and can say, well, this is what's going on. Now, my question, I may have missed something in the presentation, so I just seeking some clarity in that you shared some of the causes for mental illness. And you said the causes or the main cause was relating to natural disaster. Did I get that correct? Or can you just clarify that for me, please? And the other point I wanted to make is for the education awareness, I think consistent, because it's some years ago, coming from the same mental health unit, I had a good understanding that what mental health means and what is mental illness. But I think consistent education is needed for us to appreciate and better understand the condition.
Thank
If I
you.
may just go back to the issue of the natural disasters, I think the point there was that there seemed to have been some increase after the natural disaster, not that the natural disaster were responsible for it. I think that was it, yeah, from what I gather. You guys are the ones who put it there, so you guys can hear. Is that, yeah? You want the mic?
That's the information that we got from the mental health unit, that trauma, natural disasters and family issues, a lack of support from the family, some of the issues that they can relate to with those patients.
And relating to what you spoke about in terms of education, I think once you're going to, and Terry probably could agree with me, put these homes in a community, the community should be educated as to this is coming, this is who these people are, this is why we're putting them there in a humane fashion. And even the children should be made aware. Look, you may see this, don't get alarmed, and that kind of stuff. And sometimes even for, as adults, as parents, children take their cue from us. And so the adults may need to, kind of calm them down. But at the same time, there has to be some form of control that when it's getting out of, something is done, probably it's time for, as Terry said, to move this individual from there into another more controlled environment.
Thank you. Just to add to Dr. Pigott, I totally agree. The recommendation really from the floor is that if I move John Doe to Lookout, that the Lookout community should be aware of it. What's the census on the floor? Right.
You're mixing things up here. Just a minute. Confidentiality has nothing to do with confidentiality has to do with revealing a particular person's details of their health. If I see this person walking down the street, I don't know. All I know is that this person is in this community. They do have some mental, but I don't know this person individually. don't have all the details of this person's mental health or whatever. All I know is that this person is here, and since I know this, I'm not going to be afraid of this person. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to stigmatize this person, because we are giving proper education as to what mental health is, right? You remember what confidentiality is. Confidentiality is my taking Pastor Keller's information and broadcasting it. It's not the general kind of stuff. I work in group homes. I'm a supervisor, psychologist supervising group homes. The people around the group homes who live there, and these group homes are run by the government. The people around there know who live in them. They don't know the identity of the people. That's a difference when it comes to confidentiality.
Small community, deeper impact. Yeah. Yes, is yes. Yes.
I hear what you're saying, but how do we get around that? That is
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Go ahead there. Question.
Good night. Good night, everybody. I must say that I am very... Good night, everybody. I am very, very, very happy that I made the decision to attend tonight's discussion session. I considered it very informative, and I was very shocked when I was reading what was presented. In the early presentation, I saw on the screen that acute mental ill persons are being held in the prison. Do you have any data to show or to say how long this has been happening? And if so, why, if currently it's still happening, why until now there hasn't been any changes in their placement if they're having an acute mental episode? Thank you. That's one. The first person that asked a question suggested that we should be educated to identify depression or anxiety. My personal opinion on that, it's good, and I still think it's bad. Because a lot of times, yes, we have the information, and people don't know when to use that information. So you'd find a lot of people, I'm knowledgeable of the signs of depression. I think Don Ben is struggling from depression. And here I am, the depression specialist, diagnosing and telling Miss Ben what she should do to improve her daily life. So it's a good thing to be knowledgeable of, but when to apply, how to apply, that time frame as to know, it's just like a disaster. When you should approach it, when you should approach how to counsel and stuff like that. It's good and it's bad. And the third thing, as a government worker, I think ministry, not only mental health, social service, collectively, the government should do frequent mental health sessions, yes, reviews, surveys, to see how we're coping. You rightfully said there's a thin line between, all right, thank you guys. And daily we're presented with a lot of issues, and it's hard some days when you have to deal with clients, deal with persons on the whole. So I think ever so often, government should come out and have that survey done to have an understanding of our mental health status, where we at, how we're coping, and the way forward.
All right.
Let us answer first, Lynn, and then you can come.
Can we address the speaker before we have the next question? I would say about a year ago, last year, I know that the mental health unit was at different workplaces. They administered a questionnaire to find out where your mental health is. I'm seeing nothing on the floor. So some persons in this room, so they do, well, it's just currently, they started to address mental health on a whole. So there's questionnaire, there's educational, every morning I'm sure you listen to, there's health tips, mental health tips and things like that. So they has improved their awareness programs and basically clock in to see where we at in the workplace. I would agree with you, more needs to be done, but we are on the right track at the moment. In terms of persons being held in the prison for treatment, because that's what it actually is. So the Mental Health Act allows you or allows doctors to take someone to court who is high risk and refused to take treatment. So that is covered under the Mental Health Act. And what normally happens is those persons who are acute or chronic, they seriously pose a risk to the public. So the hospital that we currently have cannot facilitate such person who have a serious chronic mental health illness and refuse to take medication. So what normally happens, the prison is used for a temporary, and I say temporary holding cell for that person to receive the necessary medication, but not only medication, because it's a package. We're addressing the whole man. So it's medication, counseling, and social support. Temporary. When that person is back to normal, they go back to Oriole or the community. So there's a period in time of holding. Is it right to put a person like that in the prison? No, it's not really right. The prison is not meant for that time. However, at the moment, this is what Montserrat has to offer until we receive our new hospital, who I was assured have holding room for such a situation like this. All right, so there's improvement coming. We're getting there. We are improving our mental health service. Anything you want to add, Doctor?
It's not the ideal, but I think it, if that's what it is, just the word prison creates, but it's not the ideal, but that's what it is. The other part of the question is about teaching and about depression. The teaching that one gets about depression, anxiety, or anything like that is to help you and those around you.
That's it.
Is to help you and those around you so that you can identify the symptoms. You can identify when you yourself are in the throes of a depression. A family member, a friend, right? You're not diagnosing them, but you're telling them this might be, you might want to seek the help of somebody else. That's all it is.
That's it.
And not telling them, but it's for you and those who are in your inner circle, right? Not that you look around at your neighbor who you may not have any relationship with and begin to speculate and talk to others about. That's not the purpose. The purpose is for you.
And I totally agree with Dr. Pigott, because recently I had a similar situation with a family member, and behavior pattern change instantly, and breathing issues, and I recognized, oops, panic attack. And it's due to the fact that I have the knowledge in terms of what the symptoms are, I was able to, well, being a counselor also, I was able to address the situation than just quickly panic and take to the hospital and administer treatment, or want of a better way of putting it. So it's good to have a bit of knowledge, especially your family members, close family members, and so I was able to handle that panic attack before it reached the point of crisis. So it's good to know the symptoms. And as one of the things that I recognize in the presentation that I'm seeing here, anxiety and depression seem to be high here in Montserrat. There's a percentage. Schizophrenia is one of the other mental health. There's no stats for it, however, but those are the main things that seem to be clocking: depression, anxiety, schizophrenia in Montserrat. And so questions?
Okay, good night. I just want to applaud the presenters and those involved for the symposium tonight. The data is in your face, nothing that you can pretend you didn't see or didn't hear.
True.
I also want to applaud your response rates. I know for surveys in Montserrat, it's very, very difficult to get such a high response rate, and I think that's impressive. I know we've been talking a lot about education, and one of the things, even listening tonight, I think we have to speak about early detection, because nobody got up this morning and walking like a zombie on the road. So it must be a process to get to where they're at. So I think we have to make sure people understand that once it is, you detect mental illness early, then you don't necessarily get to that stage. My main concerns really is around the residents of Oriel Villa and their safety. I think, and suggestions were presented tonight, and safety in terms of traffic, because it's a busy area. It's not, I don't know that it's ideal for them, but that's what we have. But if we could put traffic signs up, something the community is aware, this is a home with mental illness residents there. So when you're driving around there, you go extra caution, because they just walk across the road or they sit on the path. And I'm really concerned about their safety in that area.
Do you realize that they're far from their home? They're at the side of the road. Their homes is all the way back up the road.
Yeah, but I think the strategy was for them to have some level of freedom, because I see them buying a few things in the shops. I see them going to get bread. I see them, so I think they allow them, rather than lock them up in the house, give them some level of freedom. So I have no problem with that strategy. What I think is the community needs to be more aware that they are in this area.
Go ahead, here you go.
No, I said I think they need something to do instead of just be sitting at the side of the road.
Whatever it is, but whatever it is, I'm concerned about their safety in that area. And I think we should pay attention to that. Thank you.
These are good observations that need to be taken care, need to be, good observations. We note them and they pass them along. Very good observations. Now, let me just say something. Our thing was from until 9, but I am on vacation, so I could stay here as long as I want. So when I'm, but right, we'll answer all the questions you have. I just wanted you to know, I don't know how long Terry has that we do have. Okay, but we're gonna try to answer all the questions you have. But we just wanted you to let you know that we did set a limit on this. But go ahead, sir.
Okay, good night, everybody. I think I, too, want to join in commending Ms. Tuitt, Mr. Crump, for the presentation tonight. I sat there and I wasn't sure. Especially for those of us who are students of research, especially graduate research studies. and recently having to do such. I was wondering if I was supposed to assess them or listen to the presentation. Because, you know, we know for those of us I'm saying there's a process that you will have to follow with your research topic, your research questions, your types of data, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, your surveys, speaking, going about getting your surveys, the right types of questions for your surveys, also getting the surveys out, getting back the data, addressing the data, speaking to the data. So I'm following the whole process, you know, looking at your summary, your conclusions, and your recommendations. And so when you sum it up, I paid more attention to the process and making sure that it was followed as opposed to the data. But it's very interesting topic that we are focusing on, and especially all the thing on mental health. It's just recent. Last week in our teachers' workshop, we were focusing on, you know, teachers' health and well-being, the different aspects, financial well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, digital well-being is another one that we looked at. And we had, I think she was probably filling in for the nurse at the mental unit, Brown Joseph. And one of the questions I asked her, as we're listening to all of this data on mental health, we have data on national literacy of the island, or maybe the rate of inflation, and other pieces of information that could give us a summary of what's happening on the island. I know we look at the samples and so forth, but I asked if there's an instrument that we can utilize to sort of measure the mental state of the island. Yeah, an instrument that perhaps like how we're doing the census, getting ready for the census right now, and everyone has to be counted in. You know, if we could utilize that instrument and issue it, you know, to as many as possible, so that what is the mental, you know, state of Montserrat, having gone through, you know, hurricane, volcano. I think a lot of us, I know some work was done before, but it's an ongoing process. And 28 years later, what is really the mental state of Montserrat is really my concern, really, at this time. But thank you very much.
That's a very interesting question. The population size, 4,000 and something, and you want an assessment on our mental health status. There's such a tool. It's a lot of work, though, to employ the tool for everyone. The sample size, of course, you'll do a sample size, and that would help to determine what the mental health. So it can be done, and there's such tool. The question is which tool are we using? What are we assessing? Are we assessing depression, anxiety? And, you know, so the question is which tool are you using to assess? All right? Dr. Pigott, you want to add?
Not a whole. Montserrat is not a lot of, but that would be a government project, really. I would think. We could use tools. I think follow up to this next year. We could do something like that if the Department of Social Services, Terry is, and other stakeholders on the island would join us in doing it. You have to understand that it'll be, you know, we have a few counselors in training here. It will be a little bit of a load on them to do something like that. But instruments are available to measure the mental health we could you know, fuse the various measures together. It would be you know, pretty extensive instrument if you fuse them together. But it can be done. Mm. What are you going to do? What is the intervention?
Rehabilitation to cater for all of these people. And so it's not just knowing that with a population size of 4,000 something, how many persons have mental health
Issues.
The other issue you have to address is, do we have enough counselors? And based on the slide that I saw, current caseload, 250 to 300 clients. That's quite a lot. What do you have staffing? With mental health nurse, visiting psychiatrists, and a social work.
Mrs. Fergus, there's a 2003 report that said there was 106. The 2018 report says 107. So if they say no, at the mental health unit there is 250 to 300, there has to be an increase. They're saying that there's an increase. They're saying that there's an increase.
But this is only what is seen at the unit. This is only what is seen at the unit. It's high. So now, if we step back and really think about the issues of mental health and the everyday, what should I say, problems that we all have and how we deal with them, and measure that, I'm going to tell you, if those surveys are answered honestly, I hear the word back there. I heard the word. Everybody. Right? And then how you deal with that will be the problem. Right? So, interesting. Very interesting question.
Yeah. Any more questions? Okay.
Good night, everyone. I wrote my question. We know that we all have different mental health issues and different levels in life. So I am not here to judge, but I want to identify what mental illness is in our society and how to deal with it appropriately. As was described, mental illness are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior. That's what was said. There is something that is rampant in our society, that is the same-sex marriage. Human rights to identify to however we want to identify ourselves.
We're going to stop you right there. It's not the focus of this symposium. We've dealt with mental health. I love you, brother, but this is how I operate. Once you go off, okay? Question about mental health, and that is it.
Is this?
No, that's your perception, but a question about mental health. We're not going to go down the line of same-sex marriage, and we're not going on that line.
Not here to judge. I said it. I just want to know how to relate to it.
How to?
Relate to it.
To love them. Love them. Tell them God loves them. And if you feel that it is a lifestyle that's not, you can say it, but love them. Love them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Travis, one of the things that I found in the Public Health England's report is that they're saying that in the region, the burden of mental health is about 13.5%. And when they run that across our population, which is 4649, it's about 628 persons with mental health conditions in Montserrat.
Say it again.
No, I was saying that the Public Health England, based on their research, they're saying that in the region, the burden of mental health is about 13.5%. And if they use the 13.5% against Montserrat's population, we have about 628 persons with mental health conditions.
Hey, yeah.
That sounds very serious.
Go ahead.
Good night, everyone. I just want to make a suggestion. When we look at the people who are living at Oriole Villa, I think some of them can be gainfully employed in something that could help them. It was just last week, Friday, in the area, I saw somebody that I knew when we were growing up as teenagers in these dyers. But all of us used to hang out together. And I called him, I normally call him when I see him. And he said, you could give me $5. I say, you smoke, you drink, because I'm not giving you any money to buy a cigarette and whatever. I said, I will go and buy you a drink, a juice. He told me what juice, whatever. And when I looked at him, I said, look at where he has fallen. When I was building my house, he was one of the workers that I employed. And to see him just sitting at the side of the road, a tradesman, I am saying that some of these people who are just there, they have skills and they could be used, if it's not even all day or 2 hours or whatever it is, expose them to something so that, you know, at least they can probably come back to normalcy. And that is my suggestion.
Thank you very much for that suggestion. I totally agree with you. But with the high level of stigma on Montserrat with regard to mental health illnesses, it's very difficult to place someone with a mental health illness in a workplace. And I can attest to that as the director of social services, because as part of the care plan looks at employment. And when we do contact persons right away, this is a small company who, I'm sorry, I can't help. So it's about, as mentioned earlier, it's about more education, more awareness to reduce that stigma that is very serious, that will prevent these persons from being rehabilitated totally. Yeah? So it's we in this room, hearing this presentation and understanding the significance of the data, have to be the one individually to manage our stigma and see how best we can help persons with mental health. Because they're human, and as I said, there's a very thin line between insanity and sanity, very thin. And I always put myself in this situation, if that happened to me, how would I like to be treated? So I think the onus is on individual to be mindful. I noted that you're standing up again.
Yes, yeah. For me, I like to be positive. I see hope. We can't just rule out people like that. I remembered when I went to England a few years ago, I saw Halmon. Those of us from East know Halmon. And when Halmon was down here, injection how often, and Halmon walked in, realized if he's a zombie. And when I went up to England, and I went into Ridley Market, Halmon was there at a stall, selling. selling in his operating as normal as anybody else around him. And I said, look at that. If he was in Montserrat, could be down there walking like some whatever it is. So I'm saying that there can be hope for our people if they are given the right
care.
Yes.
Care. An environment. An environment. All right. So I think it's time to round up this section. Just to draw attention first of something that is important and is about solution and help. And when I look at the data, which of the following is the most reliable source of help during difficult times? Immediate family is clocking very high at 34%. So the immediate family is a source of help to persons with mental health and a friend. But what is more interest for me really, and which I really like, is mental institution is very low, which is good. And social community group is low, although so those other places that can assist or persons go to, there should be an increase. The church is 10%. That's a bit shocking to some degree. I expected the church to be a bit more higher, but I guess all of that's basically saying, church, that we need to do more. So just to summarize the salient points that have been identified during the discussion is that more education is required to reduce the high level of stigma. More education on symptoms and signs to guide early detection. Safety for a mental challenged person. The discussion was on Oriole, but is more than who protect them rather than we hiding from them. So they do also need protection. And so I'm glad that that person highlighted the need for safety for those persons who live around that area. It's something that I will look into and see. But I would like to think it's more rehabilitation program, employment and other things to do to occupy their time from being bored. All right? The other thing I'm seeing, of course, more, I did mention it, more rehabilitation interventions are required here on Montserrat, more staff, and the latter ones, a study to understand the depth of mental health illness in Montserrat, or issues in Montserrat. What is the situation? What are the causes? What are the triggers? It's important that we know that in terms of guiding our intervention plans. So thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Fergus, for so wonderfully facilitating our discussion and our question and answer. Let's give her and we thank Courtney and Stephanie for their wonderful presentation tonight. And you, the audience, for such enlightened comments and questions. And I like the way, yeah, go ahead, it's all right. I like the way it ended. Mrs. Fergus spoke of the family, and as you spoke of the gentleman in England, and the difference that you saw over there, probably just, we don't even know. But the change in probably how he was accepted, the change in how he was viewed, right, could have made the difference. Why am I saying that? A lot of times, even families can be the source of mental health problems, right? And not only the source, but then they perpetuate it by the way they treat them, right? And that is our focus for tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about family relations and how it affects individuals. So come tomorrow, bring someone with you, and let's fill up the seats tomorrow night. Miss Melita Thompson, Shane McFarlane, and hopefully we'll have Julian if you can connect to him by Zoom from Anguilla, who will be doing the presentations tomorrow evening. But you can come and join us, and we want you to join us because it will be enlightening, and then we'll plan down the road what we will do. All right? Thank you for coming. Really give yourself an applause. Stand with me. Stand with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. Thank you for the wonderful people of Montserrat. We pray, oh God, that as we look for ways to enhance the lives of individuals, every single one of us need you and need help in some areas. And we pray that we would find something on which we can latch on to that would help us to achieve wholeness in our lives. We give you honor and praise. And as we go tonight, go with us. May the Lord be with you. May his make countenance shine upon you and give you peace. Good night, everybody. Amen.